subscribe, and keep this channel alive. She knelt in the snow and picked up pieces of her husband with her bare hands. Not debris, not clothing, pieces of him. The bomb had destroyed his carriage so completely there was almost nothing left to bury, so she collected what she could find herself, alone in the frozen courtyard, and brought it back inside. 2 days later, she went to see her killer in prison. She brought him an icon. She told him she forgave him. Then she went to the Tsar and asked him to spare the man's life. The Tsar said no. Ivan Kalyaev was hanged 3 months later. And 13 years after that, the same revolutionary movement he had given his life to came for the woman who had tried to save him. This is the story of Grand Duchess Elizabeth Feodorovna, and the question at the center of it has never been answered. When a widow forgives, who owns the right to say otherwise? February 4th, 1905, Moscow. The Russian Empire was already breaking. 3 weeks earlier, soldiers had opened fire on peaceful demonstrators outside the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. Hundreds died in what would be remembered as Bloody Sunday, and it had turned the working class against the Tsar in ways that nothing could reverse. Into this moment stepped Grand Duke Sergei Alexandrovich, the Tsar's uncle, Governor-General of Moscow, and, by almost universal agreement, the most despised man in Russia. His record was not complicated. In 1891, acting on direct orders from Tsar Alexander III, Sergei expelled every Jewish resident from Moscow, not relocated, not transferred, expelled. 20,000 people, entire families, long-established communities, driven from the city in the middle of winter. Sergei enforced it personally. He did not apologize for it. The satirical press had a name for him, the Monster of Moscow. What almost no one talks about today is that his wife had married him, fully aware of who he was. Princess Elizabeth of Hesse-Darmstadt, granddaughter of Queen Victoria, born into German Protestant aristocracy, converted to Russian Orthodoxy and married Sergei in 1884. The marriage produced no children. By most accounts, it was a formal arrangement more than a warm one, cold in private, polished in public. But she stayed, and she was present at the Kremlin on the morning of February 4 when the bomb reached the carriage. She heard the explosion. Then she walked toward it. But here's the detail almost no documentary on this story ever mentions. Kalyaev had tried to kill Sergei 2 days earlier and stopped himself. Here's why that matters. Ivan Kalyaev was 26 years old in February 1905, a poet, a committed revolutionary, a member of the Socialist Revolutionary Party's combat organization, a small unit built specifically for political assassination. On February 2nd, 2 days before the attack, Kalyaev stood in the street outside the Kremlin with the bomb already in his hands. He waited for Sergei's carriage. He saw it coming. He didn't throw. Not because his nerve failed, because the carriage also contained Elizabeth and 2 of Sergei's young niece and nephew, and Kalyaev refused to kill them. He walked away. He reported back to his comrades and told them what he had done. They waited 2 more days. On February 4, the carriage held only Sergei. At 2:45 in the afternoon, Kalyaev stepped forward and threw the bomb from close range. The explosion destroyed the carriage instantly. Sergei was killed almost immediately. Police arrested Kalyaev where he stood. He did not attempt to run. His coat was still smoking. He told them, "I consider my act inevitable and just." Elizabeth Feodorovna arrived at the scene within minutes. She later told those closest to her that she found pieces of her husband scattered across the snow. The historical record confirms she was present and personally oversaw the recovery of his remains. What her face showed as she worked, no one recorded it. She had him buried in the chapel he had funded himself. Then she put on black, and she asked for a prison appointment. If you're finding this story as extraordinary as I do, subscribe now. These are the stories the history books buried. We're just getting to the part that makes everything you've heard so far even stranger. Elizabeth Feodorovna requested access to Ivan Kilyaev at Taganka prison within 48 hours of the assassination. She went alone. She brought an icon of Christ. What happened in that room was documented by Kilyaev himself in a letter written afterward to the Socialist Revolutionary Party. He described a woman who entered without anger and without accusation, who told him plainly she forgave him. She asked him to repent. He declined. He told her the death of Sergei had been politically necessary and that he accepted the consequences. She said she would pray for him. She left the icon with him when she went. Then she went to the Tsar. Nicholas II had already decided the outcome. Ivan Kilyaev would be tried and executed. But Elizabeth Feodorovna, the Tsar's aunt by marriage, a woman the imperial family held in genuine respect, formally petitioned for clemency. She asked Nicholas to spare his life. The Tsar refused. Ivan Kilyaev was hanged on May 23, 1905. He was 26 years old. And this is where most people close the story. But the question this story is actually asking hasn't been answered yet, because the revolution that killed her husband was coming for her, too. It just hadn't arrived yet. Within a year of Sergei's death, Elizabeth Feodorovna had sold almost everything she owned. Her jewels were auctioned, her palace apartments were dissolved, her household was ended. The money went to a convent. In 1909, she founded the Marfo-Marianskin Convent of Mercy in Moscow, not a closed religious house, but an active community built around nursing the sick, the poor, and the abandoned. She became its first abbess. She wore a habit. She worked in the wards herself. She did not ask anyone to do what she was not already doing. When the First World War came, she expanded operations to care for wounded soldiers. When the revolution came in 1917, every foreign-born aristocrat with any instinct for survival was on a train to the border. Elizabeth stayed. The German ambassador arranged safe passage. Emissaries came. Friends begged. She turned them all away. Her sister, Empress Alexandra, was already under arrest with Nicholas II and their 5 children. Elizabeth had chosen to remain in the country that was preparing to kill her entire family. In April 1918, the Bolsheviks arrested her at the convent. She was transferred east to Alapayevsk in the Urals, placed alongside other Romanov relatives the new government hadn't yet decided what to do with. On July 18, 1918, one day after Nicholas II, Alexandra, and their 5 children were shot in Yekaterinburg, soldiers took Elizabeth and 7 other Romanov prisoners to an abandoned mine shaft outside the city. They threw them in alive. Elizabeth Feodorovna was 53 years old. White Army forces excavated the mine shaft in October 1918. The recovered remains showed signs that Elizabeth had survived the fall and lived for some time in the dark before she died. According to those who retrieved the bodies, her hands had been wrapped in cloth. She had, apparently, tried to bandage the wounds of the others as she lay dying. Ivan Kilyaev, the man she had forgiven, the man she brought an icon to, the man she petitioned the Tsar for, had been hanged by the state she had served. The revolutionary movement he died believing in murdered the woman who had tried to save him. No monument was ever built to Kalyaev. In 1981, the Russian Orthodox Church canonized Elizabeth Feodorovna as a saint. The revolution that killed her has no saints. She has won. If you liked this video, let me know where in the world you're watching from and what time it is. I'm curious about that. And if you have a suggested topic, feel free to let me know in the comments.